Hi, folks. This is Jeff Morrison of the Cadmus Group. This webinar today is a short 30-minute webinar introducing the new Alternative Fuel Toolkit, which is a website that was launched a couple months ago and is supposed to be a one-stop shop for alternative fuel planning from state and local transportation agencies. So today's plan is just to give you a quick background on the toolkit and then run through some of the actual tools on the website. So I just wanted to mention that this project was sponsored by the Oregon Department of Transportation, the U.S. Department of Transportation, Federal Highway Administration, as well as 7 other state departments of transportation who collectively came together in a pooled fund. So with that, I'll turn it over to Art James of the Oregon Department of Transportation. Take it away, Art.
Thank you, Jeff. And again, it's Art James, Oregon Department of Transportation. This has been an effort that started back in 2015 with 8 different state DOTs contributing to the effort. The part of the goal was to implement 5 workshops around the state, around the nation, and different states on the topic of accelerating the use of alternative fuels and vehicles and infrastructure. ODOT led the effort with Federal Highway Administration as our technical liaison and major funding partner, and special thanks to Diane Turchetta, who will be at the end of this presentation, for being a great partner in this effort. The consultant team, Cadmus Group, Atlas Public Policy, and Vermont Energy have all been great to work with. The 5 workshops that we held started out here in Oregon on electric vehicle infrastructure corridors, the West Coast Electric Highway, as we call it. Then we had one on innovative finance mechanisms in Washington, D.C. in 2016. A third was on fleet adoption of alternative fuels in Austin, Texas. That was in April of 2016. Then we had one in Troy, New York in 2016 as well, concentrating on clean freight corridors. And the final one this last year was best practices from California. That was in Sacramento in March of 2017. There have been 3 webinars that have been sponsored so far. This is the last one, kind of cleanup to introduce the Alternative Fuel Toolkit website. This has been and continues to be work that's critically important to reduce carbon emissions. I would just counsel everybody to believe in the science and don't let the ebbs and flows of political landscapes discourage our efforts, and help us keep the momentum going as we move forward. Thanks, Jeff.
Great, thanks, Art. So I'm just going to give a real quick overview of the structure of the website, and then Nick Nigro of Atlas Public Policy is going to go through and demo some of the tools. I did want to mention that there's a chat box where you can put questions in anytime as Nick kind of helps you navigate, and we'll do a quick Q&A at the end. So please ask any questions, and feel free to jump on the website as we're kind of going through this. So let's see, advance. So this is the homepage. Broadly, we've sort of organized it into 3 large categories where we're putting all the content of the website. There's Learn, Plan, and Act. And so if you go in the Learn, this is kind of where we give you the fundamentals about alternative fuels, some of the definitions, and some of the sort of basic comparisons that are very frequently asked with prices or emissions. So those are kind of the fundamentals in Learn. In Plan is where we put the majority of the tools that are actually in the toolkit. So maps and calculators. And then ACT is supposed to be sort of action oriented. So this is helping the transportation agencies get out there and really implement and plan and act towards deploying alternative fuels. Lastly, I did want to mention there's another section on workshops, and these 5 workshops that we held were directly informing the content that's on the website now. Basically, we would talk about specific topics during the course of the day of the workshop, and then at the end of the day, we would say, okay, what do you guys need from a website to really help you make decisions in your transportation agency? We collected all those ideas and put them forward on the website. So that's essentially how this kind of feedback worked with the website, and as a result, these are the tools that we have. These are kind of, this list here is sort of the main, I would say, tools from the website that you may use in your planning, and Nick's going to go through a couple of these, but please feel free to look in more depth on your own. Okay, so we'll switch over to Nick now, and he's going to give us a live demo. One sec, Nick.
Thanks, Jeff. Can you hear me?
Yep, can hear you, and I can see you.
All right, great. Well, I'm happy to run through a quick demo of the Alternative Fuel Toolkit website. Thanks, Art, for that great introduction, and Diane for spearheading this project. It's been a very rewarding experience for Atlas Public Policy, and it was a pleasure to be a part of it. The Toolkit website, as Jeff mentioned, was relaunched just a few months ago. Over the last couple of years, while we were running these workshops that Art had mentioned early on, we would collect that information from the workshops and put them on this website, altfueltoolkit.org. And what we found is, as we were marching through these workshops, was we had collected a lot of content and material. And so we wanted to reorganize and rethink how we put this information together for you, our audience, to make it more accessible and useful. And so we took a deep dive into all the content and tools we had, and the Learn, Plan, Act theme is what we came up with. So I'm going to march you through some of the examples of each one of those sections, along with what one of the toolkit workshop components look like. So the first one I want to show you is this alternative fuel timeline. Lots of people, I'm sure, are interested in the history of alternative fuels. So underneath the Learn menu, there's this alternative fuels timeline, and it's an interactive timeline that goes all the way back to the beginning of the alternative fuel space, back in the early 1900s. It's interactive. You can scroll through and look at key moments. We also included embedded videos wherever we could, so you could take your time and learn more about how we got to where we are today in the alternative fuel space. And as you can imagine, as you get closer and closer to today, there's a lot more achievements from a market perspective and technology perspective. And so I encourage you all to explore the timeline and get up to speed on how we got here. So that's Learn. There's other components to the Learn part of the website, but in the interest of time, I encourage you to browse those offline. Next piece is on Plan. I'm going to show you a couple of the tools we put together for the planning aspects for alternative fuel deployment. The first is the cost calculator. There are great tools out there to try to estimate costs for deploying alternative fuels. One in particular that is valuable is the Argonne National Labs A-Fleet tool. It can do sophisticated fleet total cost of ownership analyses and emission reduction analyses for a variety of vehicles and fuels, and it has a number of knobs you can play with to try to figure out where alternative fuels might make sense in your fleet. It's quite an advanced tool, I'll say. And so for those who are just getting started, you might not easily dive into that tool and start to use it. And so what we wanted to do was make something more accessible, but build on that core model that Argonne had created for A-Fleet. And so that's where this AFE cost calculator came in. So I'm launching it right now. And what it is essentially two different interactive dashboards that give you a quick way of exploring the total cost of ownership of owning different vehicles and fuels, as you can see down on the bottom here. And in your interface up on the top is quite straightforward. First, you select the vehicle that you're interested in comparing. Looks like we're comparing a car by default. We could also look at a delivery truck, medium duty pickup truck, or refuse truck. And what you see happening is instantly I'm seeing the change in total cost of ownership across all these different fuel types using scenarios analyses that were conducted using A-Fleet tool offline. And so what we did was run a number of scenarios, collect all those results, and present them in this dashboard form so you could more easily figure out a basic understanding of the total cost of ownership for all fuels. We also have different data that's local to the location, so state. So you can click on that and you can see the total cost of ownership change slightly depending on the state. And so once you get familiar with the basic calculator, as we call it, you can go to the advanced calculator and look at even more options. So again, this is not a replacement for the A-Fleet tool from Argonne. It's meant to build on top of it to provide an entryway into understanding the total cost of ownership of alternative fuels. And so in this version of the dashboard, we have more options essentially. You'll recall just a moment ago we were looking at two options. We could select a car or vehicle type and a location. Now we can select the location and the vehicle type, but we can also select different fuel types, whether or not the infrastructure is a public station or a privately owned station, whether or not the vehicle is traveled VMT annually is high, low, or the average, and also whether or not the fuel prices are low or the average. And so basically you just have more options to be able to explore different scenarios quickly without having to download an Excel spreadsheet and run a model and learn how to use it. You can just click around and explore the different propositions of alt fuels. And the right are all the results. You can see the total cost of ownership, the payback period, along with some of the assumptions that went into the options that you selected. So that's the alternative fuel vehicle cost calculator. And if you're interested in diving even deeper than what that basic and advanced calculator allow you to do, we encourage you to download the A-Fleet tool from Argonne. So we wanted to show people the economics. We also want to show the access components of alternative fuels, and that's where this map comes into play. The Department of Energy's Alternative Fuel Data Center has a wonderful database of alternative fuel stations located throughout the country. It's for a general public audience, so it includes great features like how to get from point A to point B. Our audience is slightly different. It's generally practitioners in the field, and so we designed this dashboard to take that data in real time from the Department of Energy's website and present it to you in a slightly different way that's geared more towards our target audience. And so what we're looking at here is a map of all of the alternative fuel stations across the United States, in Alaska and in Hawaii as well, down here, along with a number of filters that you can do to quickly explore different scenarios. So for example, we have up here in the top right, we can look at the alternative fuel stations by region. All we have to do is say, click on New England, where I'm from, and instantly the map will filter to just show you the alternative fuel stations in New England. We can also use filters like the fuel filter to look at just say the CNG stations in New England. And so now in a quick moment, I'm now just isolated all of the compressed natural gas fueling stations in the states in New England. Another unique feature that we added as part of this project is to connect the alternative fuel database with the National Highway System from the Federal Highway Administration. There's a database that they provide online that maps all of the major roadways in the US to counties. And so we thought, in particular for alternative fuel folks, they care about corridors. So we connected those two data sets together, and through this corridor filter, you can actually look at the alternative fueling stations along a particular corridor. So let's say, for example, Interstate 95, just type that into the search box, check it, and then in a moment, you'll see I'm filtering now to just look at all of the alternative fuel stations along Interstate 95. And the filter is connected to counties. So any county that's located in Interstate 95 is what we're looking at here. And going back to my example, again, if I wanted to look at CNG, I'm now looking there at just CNG, and you can see there's significant gaps along Interstate 95 for those vehicle types. And again, going back to my earlier example of New England, if we look there, these are the CNG stations in New England along Interstate 95. And so that's the alternative fuel station map. Again, it's taking advantage of great data that the U.S. Department of Energy makes publicly available and combining it with data from the Federal Highway Administration in order to make it useful for our audience. Now I want to show you an example of the ACT components, the more action-oriented parts of the toolkit website. And what I'm showing you here is the action guide. So the action guide is a series of activities that a public agency can take to advance alternative fuels in his or her state. And it's intended to help you walk you through the process from just getting started in alternative fuels to becoming a leader. And so it's interactive. As I scroll down, you'll see we're in starting points, the beginnings, and these boxes are each different activities with great detail about what constitutes an activity to get started in alternative fuels, like getting a request from the governor and acting on legislation that was passed, internal interest, etc. And you can see what we've also done throughout each of these actions is provide links to content that's on either the alternative fuel, that is generally on the Alternative Fuel Toolkit website. So other content in the toolkit website that's relevant to the particular activity, we link to it right here for your convenience. And so let's say you've completed some actions as to get started, and now you're gonna look to learn more about alternative fuels. You can move on to the learning actions. I'm not gonna walk through all of these, but you can see there's a number of activities that a DOT transportation agency could undertake to learn about alternative fuels. And then as the public agency is ready to take action, we've got a significant number of activities that are possible for that DOT to undertake, like conducting analyses on the public value proposition of alternative fuels or identifying funding sources, etc. Again, throughout each of the actions, we're linking to other content so you can explore more about that activity through content on our website. And finally, when you're ready to lead, we have a number of activities that you could undertake, such as deploying fueling infrastructure. I'm going to just scroll up here to make it a little bit easier. Deploying fleets, leading by example, essentially deploying alternative fuels in your public fleet. And finally, being a leader in research and policy. And so there are tens of actions that are summarized in the action guide. It's meant to be an exploratory tool to help a public agency better understand what their role might be in supporting alternative fuels. And finally, we've mentioned this project was involved conducting a series of workshops around the country on specific topics in alternative fuels. And so we created these comprehensive web pages to summarize all the activities that went on at that workshop and some of our lessons learned. And I wanted to show you just one example because there's some really great content here that you might want to reuse for your own purposes locally. This one is just the one the most recent one we had conducted in California last year. And for each workshop, we assembled resources that were relevant for the topic. In this case, we were talking about the state of California and trying to learn from their experience being such a forward-looking state in alternative fuels. We connected all resources that could be relevant on that topic. So think research reports, case studies, fact sheets, websites, etc. That's all contained in the resource library, which you could explore. As part of the workshop, we ran a couple of breakout groups, case study based breakout groups, where you can find the materials here. As the team or the participants at the workshop suggested, we make that tool that I showed you earlier on the alternative fuel station map. And so that was an output of that workshop. And finally, some of the other conference materials, including a summary report of the workshop and some slides and handouts. Okay, so that is the Alternative Fuel Toolkit website. Jeff, I'll turn it over back to you.
Great, thanks, Nick. And let me just take control back. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Diane Trichetta of FHWA. Diane, take it away.
Yes, can you hear me okay?
You're a little faint, but I can hear you.
Okay, well, we'll try to correct that. Thanks everyone for tuning in today, and I'm going to provide some information here on our wrap up and next steps slide. One thing we'd like to do is continue the updates of the dashboards on the website. So one thing I want to say is if you have any other suggestions about the website or content on the website, don't be shy about letting us know. Please reach out and let us know what you'd like to see on there, what's the best information, what could be most of use to you all. In terms of the corridor designation process, we will continue the designation process. As many of you, probably all of you know, we just got done with our second round of designations, and all that information, the tables and the updated maps are all on the AFC website. So please go on and take a look at those if you haven't already. And in terms of next steps, one thing that we promised from the beginning of our fast-backed designation process is to help you all with maybe some regional convenings. And we're at the point now that we are going to jump into those. We'll probably do a few of those, or it's 5 in total. We will probably do a few of those in 2018 and next fiscal year. Nothing set in stone yet, but we're thinking that you know, the first one will be in Minneapolis, Minnesota, sometime in the May and June timeframe, and we'll be looking at I-94 as a priority corridor along with other corridors that run through the Midwest, and it will be a Midwest regional convening. And our consultants for those convenings are Cadmus and CalSTART. So we look forward to getting those developed and implementing them, and we'll keep you informed as to the other 4 convenings, where they're going to be and timeframes. So, you know, through those convenings, we have a couple of goals. One is to look at the maps we have on the website and look at our gaps along corridors and see how we fill in those gaps. Or if there's a corridor throughout a region or state that hasn't yet made it on the map, we'd like to take a look at that and see if we can get it on the map. And lastly, I'm sure I shouldn't say lastly, because there would be many things to talk about in these convenings, but you know, funding is always a priority topic area, and we'll talk about what funding is available and maybe best ways to work together, state to state and region to region, and how to leverage that funding. So those are really the next steps. And as far as the pooled fund project is concerned, it has been really a pleasure to work with my good friends, Jay Pudwell and Art James at the Oregon Department of Transportation. Thank you for your leadership on this project. And also, as Art mentioned, the consultants, Cadmus, Atlas Policy, and Vermont Energy. Thank you for all the work you put into this. You made this a very easy project, and I hope folks will will use this tool that was developed in the website. And like I said before, please let us know if you have anything else you'd like to see on the website. And I think with that, we'll turn to some questions if you all have any.
Great. Thanks, Diane. This is Jeff Morrison again of Cadmus, and please don't be shy. Put in any questions you have about the website or the convenings or the alternative fuel corridors maybe. Right now we have just a couple comments and questions. The first is just to highlight that the California's hydrogen fueling assessment tool, CHIT, is located at a new link, and so we'll make sure we get that link updated on the website, on the Alt Fuel Toolkit website. Next question: why is the ACT section only oriented towards DOTs and state agencies? Why not municipalities, school districts, private businesses? And I guess Nick, feel free to jump in, but I think ACT could apply broadly to anyone who's doing transportation planning. The steps are kind of broad enough where it's really just supposed to get you moving in the right direction, and every agency or office administration is not going to take exactly the same steps. So they're meant to be more of a general guide. Nick, do you want to say anything?
No, that was good.
All right. Great. Any other questions? We'll give it just a minute here in case anyone's typing something up. Okay, looks like no one has questions. So please go forth and use the website. And like Diane said, give us as much feedback as you can about what you need to do your alternative fuel planning. And with that, I think it's a wrap.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.